Hi, I'm Christy, and today we'll learn about fractions. Fractions is an important concept in mathematics, and we come across fractions in our everyday life frequently. Say, for example, remember your last birthday, you'd have brought a big cake and you would have made it into a number of small pieces, right? And also, you made sure that each one of the piece is of the same size as the other ones, right? So that you and your friends got an equal share in the cake. So what have you done actually? You've divided the cake into a number of equal parts, and each one of these parts is what we call a fraction of the whole cake, right? And also, during summers, you get a huge watermelon, and you would make a number of small pieces, and also each one of the piece, if each one of the pieces are of the same size, then you can say each one of the piece is a part or a fraction of the watermelon, right? So fractions is a very important topic, and let's dig deep into this topic of fractions. And yeah, let me share my screen. The topic is fraction. So what is the fraction? The fraction is a part of a whole. If you take, for example, look at this circle, you can divide this circle into two equal parts, and each one of these parts represent a fraction. Right? So what is the shaded part? What does it represent? It represents one arc of the full circle, right? Okay, so it is 1/2. So similarly, let me draw a square. And if you shade a part of this square, so what part is represented by this square? It is also 1, right? Okay. So, and similarly, let's draw a rectangle. Hmm? So let's draw a rectangle, and it's divided into 3 equal parts. Hmm? And if you shade 2 of these parts, then what part of this is represented by the shaded part? What part of the rectangle is represented by the shaded part? It is 2 parts like this, green parts. Right. Okay, so this is what we call a fraction, a part of a thing. Hmm? Yeah. And there are many different types of fractions. Now, so let us dig um, deep into these the different types of fractions. The first one is 1/2. Okay, so this is the most common one. 1/2. Mm. So what is 1/2 of a fraction? See, in all of these figures, we represented 1/2, right? In the first two figures, we represented 1/2. Okay? So what did we do? We divided the circle into 2 parts. And if you shade just one of them, then that represents 1/2, right? So 1/2 means it, it represents 1 part out of 2 equal parts. And remember, this term equal is very important. Okay. So because whenever you're you're doing fractions, the the circle or the figure, whatever figure you're using, it has to be divided into equal parts. Only then the selected part will be called a fraction. So let me explain this in detail. You see here. So this is a square, and I've shaded exactly half of the square. So this represents one half of the square. But if I take the same square and if I shade only a tiny fraction, okay, and you can see that this doesn't represent one half of the square, right? Because I have not divided the square into two equal parts. One of the parts is bigger than the other one. You can easily see that this part is bigger than the other one. This is a smaller part. So, can I say that this shaded part represents one half? No, it doesn't represent one half because the square is not divided properly. Right, it is not divided equally. Okay, so whenever the given figure is not divided into equal parts, you cannot say that the shaded part represents one part or two part of the given figure. So you have to make sure that the given figure is divided into equal parts, and this is very important. Okay. So now let's go to the second type of fraction. So now we've learned 1/2. What is 1/2? It represents one part out of two equal parts. And then what is the second one? 1/3. 1/3. Yeah. So what is 1/3? If the given figure is divided into three equal parts, and if one part of the given figure is shaded, then this one represents 1/3, right? So it is 1/3. So how do you define it? If one part out of three parts is shaded, then that represents 1/3. Okay. So one part out of three parts. Right. Okay. So now let's I've got some figures and we'll try to make the figure into three equal parts. One second. So see here. So I've got a rectangle. Okay. So let's divide this rectangle into three equal parts. So I'm taking a scissor and first we can make sure that we divide it into we can make sure that we draw some lines on the rectangle so that you are dividing it into three equal parts, and that's what I'm doing now. Okay, I'm drawing some lines here, and I'm dividing it into three equal parts. Let's take some made like that. Instead of one piece. Okay, see here. So now I've divided the rectangle into three equal parts. Right, guys? Okay. So then each one of these pieces represents one part, right? Or it represents a third of the given rectangle. Okay, so this piece represents a third, and this one also represents a third, right? So each one of these pieces, they represent a third of the given rectangle, right? Yeah. Okay. And then the next fraction. The next type of fraction is 1/4. What is 1/4? 1/4. Yeah. Okay, so 1/4 is if a fraction represents one part out of four equal parts, then that fraction is 1/4 of the given figure. One part out of 4 equal parts. And that represents 1/4. So let me draw the rectangle. And so how do you represent 1/4 of this rectangle? You can draw a rectangle like this. But first you can divide it into 4 equal parts, and you can shade one of the 4 parts. So this represents 1/4. Right. So similarly, you can draw a circle. And you can divide it into 4 equal parts. And if you shade just one of the 4 parts, and this part represents 1/4 of the circle. And what do you commonly call this? We don't usually call it 1/4. So what do you call it? We usually call it a quarter, right? Okay, a quarter. So, so I've got some Lego blocks, and let's try to represent 1/4 of the given figure. So I've got some blocks, and yeah, I've got something red and white blocks, and so see here. So I'm trying to represent 1/4 or a quarter with this Lego blocks. So what do you do here? I've taken 3 pieces. Yeah, I'm joining these two. And then I'm taking another piece. So now I've joined 3 pieces together. And then I'm adding a black piece to the block. See here. So then you can see that this block is made up of how many pieces? 4 pieces. Out of these 4 pieces, 1 piece is a black piece, right? So this black piece represents 1/4 of the given block, right? This black piece represents 1/4 of the given block. Yes. Okay. And then the next one. Similarly, there are many other fractions. So let's learn. Then the 4th type of fraction is 2/4, or just let's learn about 2/4. Yeah. So what is 2/4? 2/4 means it represents 2 parts out of 4 parts, right? 2 parts out of 4 parts. So you can easily draw the figure. Let's draw. So let's draw a circle, and let's shade 3 parts. So this represents 2/4. And also, did you notice that 2/4 can also be simplified to 1/2, right? Or it is half, right? It represents an half of the whole, right? Okay, so 2/4 is also equal to 1/2, right? So these 2 fractions are equal fractions. Okay. And so similarly, there are many other fractions. You can represent 1/5, 2/5, 2/3. So there are many different fractions. So for now, let's start with this 2/4, and then we'll learn about the different types of fractions. Yeah. So the first one is like fractions. So the next one, types of fractions. So the first type of fraction is like fractions. So what fractions are called like fractions? Like fractions, fractions having the same denominator are called like fractions. Fractions having the same denominator. So these are 1/7, 3/7, 3/7, 6/7. You see here? So look at all of these fractions. All of these fractions, they have the same denominator, 7. So then they are called like fractions. So they are called like fractions. So this is the first type of fractions, which is like fractions. So similarly, you have unlike fractions. Then what must be unlike fractions? What must be unlike fractions? Fractions having the same denominator are called like fractions. Then unlike fractions will have different denominators. So fractions having different denominators. Denominators are called unlike fractions. So take for example 1/3, 1/7, 3/5. So look at all of these fractions. Their denominators are different. So these fractions are called like fractions. Yes. And then, so how do we represent these fractions on a number line? Because you must have learned how to represent, natural numbers and then integers on the number line, right? So similarly, you can also represent fractions on the number line. So how do you represent fractions on the number line? Representing fractions on a number line. So what do you do here? So let's take a simple fraction. Let's take one fifth. Okay. 1/5. So how can we represent 1/5 in the number line? So first, let's draw the number line. So this is your number line, and so let's say this represents 0, and this represents 1. And also remember, all of these fractions, their value lies between 0 and 1. Okay, so all of these proper fractions, their values lie between 0 and 1. By the way, what is a proper fraction? A fraction whose denominator is less than its numerator is called a proper fraction. So 1/5, 1/5 is a proper fraction because its denominator is less than its numerator. So you can note it down. What is a proper fraction? A fraction whose denominator is less than the numerator. So we call it a proper fraction. So 1/5 is a proper fraction. Then how do you represented on a number line. So you can mark the two numbers because you know that it's going to lie between 0 and 1. So you can draw 0 and 1. And this portion, it has to be divided into 5 equal parts, right? Because you're representing 1/5. So it has to be divided into 5 equal parts. Then how many lines should be drawn in between? You have to draw 4 lines, right? So see here, now I've drawn 4 lines, and yeah. So what will the first line represent? The first line will represent 1/5, right? Because see here, 0 will represent 0/5, and 1, if you try to represent 1 with a denominator 5, you can represent it as 5/5, right? So 0 can be represented as 0/5, and 1 can be represented as 5/5. Then what will be the other fractions in between the 0 and 5? The first one would be 1/5. The second one would be 2/5. The third one, 3/5. Sorry, 3/5. And the fourth one would be 4/5. Yes. So then you are representing 1/5. So where should you mark it? 1/5 should be marked here. Right? So this should be your part on the number line, which represents 1/5. And how will you represent 4/5? Where is 4/5? Here is the fraction 4/5. Right? So this is how you represent the fraction on the number line. So yeah, so let us represent another fraction. Second one is 1/7. And remember, this is also a proper fraction, so its value lies between 0 and 1. So how will you draw the number line? The number line, the value lies between 0 and 1. So 1 should be your first number, and sorry, 0 should be your first number, and 1 is your last one. And it has to be divided into 7 equal parts. So let's try to divide it into 7 equal parts. So how many lines should be drawn in between? You have to draw 6 lines and not 7 lines. Remember, you should draw 6 lines. So now it's divided into 7 equal parts. So 0 can be represented as, let me change the color. 0 can be represented as 0/7, and 1 can be represented as 7/7. So similarly, this one represents 1/7, 2/7, 3/7, 4/7, 5/7, 6/7. And what are you trying to represent? You're trying to represent 1/7. So where is 1/7? There is here. Similarly, there is 4/7. Here is 4/7. Okay, so this is how we represent proper fractions on the number line. And you can also represent improper fractions, but it's not, it's beyond our scope now, for now. And yeah, so, and then let's learn how to add fractions. So addition of fractions. So let's take 2 simple fractions. 1/2 plus 1/, first let's add 2 like fractions. Yes. over 5 plus 2 over 5. 1/5 plus 2/5. So see here, both the fractions are like fractions because they have the same denominator, right? So adding like fractions is very easy. What should you do? Just keep the common denominator and add both the numerators together. So 1 plus 2 gives you 3/5. So this is your sum. So when you add 1/5 plus 2/5, you get 3/5. So these two are like fractions. So just add the numerator and you'll get the answer. So similarly, if you add 2/7 plus 3/7, you get the like fractions having the same denominator. So then just add the numerator. Your answer is 8/7. Yes. This is how you add like fractions. But if you are given unlike fractions, then how will you add them? Next one is unlike fractions. So 1/2 plus 1/3. These two are unlike fractions. So you cannot directly add them, but you have to find the LCM. So what is the LCM of 2 and 3? The LCM of 2 and 3 is 6, right? And also, then how will you convert the two fractions? 2 should be multiplied by 3. Similarly, and you know that whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator also, right? So when you multiply 2 by 3, you should also multiply 1 by 3. Similarly, in the second fraction, you're multiplying 3 by 2. So the first fraction should also be multiplied by 2. So what do you get? You get 3 by 6 plus 2 by 6. Right? So now you converted both the fractions into like fractions, then you can easily add them, right? So adding, what do you get? 5 by 6. So how do you add two unlike fractions? First, convert them into like fractions by finding the LCM. And once you get them as like fractions, then you can directly add the numerators. So let's see one more problem. Yes, 1/4. So what is the LCM of 5 and 4? The LCM of 5 and 4 is 20. So what do you do? 5 should be multiplied by 4. So 3 should also be multiplied by 4. 4 multiplied by 5. So 1 should also be multiplied by 5. So what do you get? 12 over 20 plus 5 over 20. So then I'm adding, you get 17 over 20. This is how you add fractions, both like fractions and unlike fractions. Yes. So I think this will, yeah. So you must have understood clearly about fractions and the different types of fractions and also addition of fractions. So hope you enjoyed this class. Yeah, thanks for watching. Bye. Thank you.